Night settles over New York City in the middle of the 19th century, softening its sharp edges. Gas lamps glow along the streets, their light trembling in the glass of tall windows. Carriages roll past at an unhurried pace, wheels whispering against stone. Inside a brownstone on East 20th Street, a child struggles for breath. Theodore Roosevelt is born into comfort on October 27, 1858. But comfort does not protect him from fear. His lungs betray him early. Asthma arrives without warning, tightening his chest, stealing air, turning nights into long, trembling vigils. His parents lift him upright, carry him to open windows, drive him through the dark streets, hoping movement will coax breath back into his body. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it does not. The boy is small, thin, nervous. Doctors advise caution, rest, stillness. They warn that exertion could kill him. His world narrows to books, rooms, observation. And so he learns to watch. He watches birds from his window, memorizing their shapes and calls. He studies insects, pinning them carefully, labeling them with precise handwriting. Jars line his shelves, small universes catalogued and controlled. Naming becomes power. Knowledge becomes safety. His father, Theodore Roosevelt Sr., moves through the house like a force of nature. Large, energetic, generous. A man who believes deeply in duty and action. To young Theodore, he is everything the boy is not. Strong where he is weak, fearless where he is anxious, physically capable where he is fragile. One day, his father speaks words that settle permanently into Theodore's mind. "You have the mind," he tells him gently, "but you do not have the body. And without the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should." It is not an insult. It is a challenge. From that moment, Theodore begins to build himself, slowly, deliberately. He lifts weights in his bedroom, practices boxing despite frequent defeat, pushes his lungs past comfort, past fear. He does not wait to feel strong before acting. He acts to become strong. The transformation is not sudden. Asthma does not disappear. Illness still finds him. But weakness is no longer an excuse. He learns that effort itself has value even when it fails, especially when it fails. By the time he enters Harvard College in 1876, he is no longer merely surviving. He is pressing forward. He studies obsessively, devouring history, biology, literature. He boxes competitively, breaking his nose, rows, hikes, exhausts himself daily. His energy is relentless, sometimes overwhelming to those around him. Then abruptly, the man he is becoming himself for is gone. In 1878, Theodore Roosevelt Sr. dies suddenly. Theodore is 19. The loss is devastating. His father had been compass, standard, anchor. Without him, the world feels unsteady. Theodore finishes Harvard, but grief follows him quietly, reshaping ambition into urgency. Life, he realizes, is fragile. Waiting is dangerous. He marries young. Alice Hathaway Lee fills his life with warmth and laughter, softening his intensity. She is light. He adores her completely. Their future feels wide and promising. It lasts only a few years. In February of 1884, Alice gives birth to their daughter. Hours later, she dies. In the same house, on the same day, Theodore's mother dies as well. The loss is unbearable. Two pillars collapse at once. Theodore writes only one sentence in his diary: "The light has gone out of my life." He cannot remain. The city suffocates him with memory. Every room echoes. Grief presses too close, and so he runs, not away from pain, but into something large enough to hold it. The Badlands of the Dakota Territory stretch endlessly under open sky. Harsh, isolated, unforgiving. Theodore arrives awkward and conspicuous, his Eastern accent and spectacles drawing amusement from hardened cowboys. They doubt him. test him, mock him. He does not argue. He endures. He learns to ride until his body aches, sleeps on the ground beneath indifferent stars, faces blizzards, drought, hunger, and loss. His cattle die. His investments fail. Rustlers steal. Storms destroy months of work overnight. The land does not care who he is, and that indifference heals him. Out here, grief loosens its grip, not because it fades, but because it is no longer trapped. Pain has space to move. The wilderness strips Theodore down and rebuilds him with calloused hands. He learns patience, resilience, humility. When he returns east, he is changed. Not hardened, but clarified. Politics no longer feel theoretical. Power is real. Decisions have weight. He enters public life with intensity that cannot be ignored. As a New York assemblyman, he attacks corruption openly. He names names, breaks traditions, refuses quiet compromise. Newspapers take notice. Enemies multiply. So do allies. He remarries, finding steadier love with Edith Kermit Caro. Together they build a loud, lively household filled with children, arguments, laughter, and motion. Theodore loves fiercely. He wants his children strong, curious, unafraid of effort. He takes them hiking, teaches them to question, to endure. Public service pulls him forward relentlessly. Police commissioner, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, each role met with tireless energy. He works harder than those around him, driven by a lifelong fear of stagnation. When war with Spain breaks out in 1898, Theodore refuses to remain behind a desk. He resigns his post and forms the Rough Riders, cowboys, athletes, miners, men who do not fit neatly anywhere else. He leads them up San Juan Hill under gunfire, upright and visible, bullets cutting the air. The image becomes legend, and when President William McKinley is assassinated in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt is suddenly called back from the wilderness of action into the center of power. The boy who once struggled for breath now stands at the edge of the presidency. The nation waits. When Theodore Roosevelt takes the oath of office in September of 1901, there is no celebration in his heart. The moment arrives heavy with consequence. William McKinley is dead, and the nation feels unmoored. Roosevelt stands at 42, the youngest president in American history, aware that many doubt him. Some fear him. They whisper that he is reckless, too loud, too emotional, too eager for conflict. They call him a cowboy who wandered into the executive office by accident. Theodore hears these concerns, absorbs them, and moves forward anyway. He does not believe leadership should be quiet. From the beginning, he treats the presidency not as a ceremonial role, but as a platform for action. He believes the president is a steward of the public good, obligated to intervene when power grows dangerous or imbalance threatens the nation's stability. Neutrality, in his view, is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is avoidance. He speaks of a square deal, a phrase simple enough to sound harmless. Yet behind it lies a firm conviction that no group, corporations, labor, or government itself should dominate the others unchecked. Fairness to Roosevelt is not passive. It must be enforced. The great trusts soon test this belief. At the turn of the century, massive corporations control railroads, oil, steel, finance. Their influence extends quietly into courts, legislatures, newspapers. Previous presidents have hesitated to challenge them, fearing economic disruption. Roosevelt does not share that fear. When the Northern Securities Company attempts to monopolize railroad transportation in the Northwest, Roosevelt authorizes legal action. The response is immediate and furious. Industrial leaders protest. Allies warn him he is going too far. Critics accuse him of betraying business interests. Roosevelt remains unmoved. He does not despise wealth. He admires strength, efficiency, ambition, but he believes unchecked power corrodes both morality and stability. Regulation to him is not punishment, it is discipline. When the Supreme Court upholds his decision, the message is clear. The federal government will no longer look away. The presidency begins to feel different under him. Louder, more visible, more personal. The White House fills with energy. Children race through hallways. Dogs bark. Conversations spill late into the night. Roosevelt reads constantly, speaks constantly, thinks constantly. Foreign diplomats find him exhausting. Journalists find him fascinating. He seems to live several lives at once. Foreign policy bends under his philosophy. Roosevelt believes peace is best preserved through strength paired with restraint. He distrusts weakness disguised as virtue. He argues that nations, like individuals, must be prepared to defend themselves if they wish to avoid conflict. His approach unsettles traditional diplomats. When negotiations with Colombia stall over the construction of a canal through Panama, Roosevelt acts decisively. He supports Panamanian independence and secures American control of the canal zone. Construction begins under brutal conditions. Disease kills workers until sanitation reforms save thousands of lives. Mountains are carved. Jungles recede. The canal shortens oceans, redraws trade routes, shrinks the world. Critics accuse Roosevelt of imperialism. He does not deny the charge outright. He believes power must be used responsibly, but he also believes it must be used. History, he trusts, will judge results as much as intentions. At home, his attention turns again to land. Roosevelt has seen wilderness disappear, forests leveled, rivers poisoned, species vanish. To him, conservation is not nostalgia. It is foresight. A nation that destroys its natural foundations, he believes, undermines its own future. He sets aside millions of acres as national parks, forests, and monuments. He protects wildlife refuges. He invites scientists and naturalists into government. He hunts, but he preserves. He understands balance. Use without destruction. Many cannot reconcile these contradictions. Roosevelt sees no contradiction at all. Industry erupts. Labor unrest spreads. Coal miners strike, threatening winter fuel supplies. Previous administrations would have responded with force. Roosevelt chooses mediation. He summons both sides. When mine owners refuse compromise, he threatens federal intervention. They yield. Workers gain concessions. Homes remain warm. Government asserts itself as arbiter rather than enforcer. Roosevelt believes this role, firm, balanced, visible, is the future of leadership. But the pace extracts a cost. Old injuries flare. Asthma returns. His eyesight begins to fail after a boxing match damages his vision permanently. He ignores warnings. Pain is familiar. Fatigue is routine. He rides horses recklessly, hikes relentlessly, works without rest. He fears slowing more than he fears harm. In 1904, the nation elects him in his own right. The victory satisfies something deep within him. He is no longer a successor or accident of fate. He is chosen. Yet even at the height of power, he thinks ahead. He believes no man should hold the presidency too long. Power dulls judgment. Comfort corrupts resolve. He pledges not to seek another term beyond his second. True to his word, in 1909, Theodore Roosevelt steps away from the White House. But rest does not suit him. He leaves the country. Africa calls to him with the same promise the Badlands once offered. Distance, danger, renewal. He hunts, collects specimens, explores rivers. Disease nearly kills him. Infection weakens him permanently, but he returns alive. Thinner, older, still restless. Politics, meanwhile, have shifted. His chosen successor, William Howard Taft, governs cautiously. Legally, Carefully, Roosevelt watches with growing frustration. Reforms slow. Trusts regain confidence. The square deal softens. Disappointment turns into resolve. In 1912, Roosevelt challenges Taft for the Republican nomination. The contest fractures the party. When leaders block him, Roosevelt breaks away and runs as a progressive. Bull Moose, they call him. During the campaign, an assassin's bullet strikes his chest. It lodges in his body after passing through his glasses case and speech manuscript. Doctors urge rest. Roosevelt refuses. He delivers the speech anyway, blood seeping through his shirt. His voice steady. His message unbroken. It takes more than that, he says, to kill a bull moose. He loses the election. Woodrow Wilson wins. But Roosevelt's campaign reshapes the political landscape, forcing progressive ideals into the center of American debate. The arena begins to quiet, and Theodore Roosevelt once again finds himself facing a world moving without him. After the election of 1912, Theodore Roosevelt finds himself in unfamiliar territory. He has lost, not quietly, not gracefully, but publicly, after pouring the last of his remaining strength into one final charge. The campaign leaves him wounded in body and spirit. The bullet remains lodged in his chest. His energy, once endless, begins to thin. For the first time in his adult life, the world does not bend around his will. Woodrow Wilson governs with a different cadence. Where Roosevelt believed in pressure, Wilson believes in patience. Where Roosevelt trusted instinct sharpened by experience, Wilson trusts systems shaped by theory. Their philosophies collide even in silence. Roosevelt writes fiercely, criticizing hesitation, warning against moral softness. Wilson listens politely and proceeds unchanged. Roosevelt becomes a voice without command. It frustrates him deeply. He writes essays and articles late into the night, his handwriting still forceful, though his hands ache more than they once did. He lectures across the country, his voice sometimes hoarse, sometimes breathless. He speaks of preparedness, of national character, of the dangers of complacency. He fears a country grown too comfortable, too confident that oceans alone can shield it from the world's violence. When war breaks out in Europe in 1914, Roosevelt feels vindicated. He watches alliances fracture and empires collapse. He warns that neutrality is temporary, that moral distance cannot be maintained forever. America, he argues, must be ready, not eager for war but prepared for its arrival. The nation hesitates. Wilson chooses restraint. Roosevelt chooses criticism. The split is not merely political, it is personal. Roosevelt believes Wilson lacks resolve. Wilson believes Roosevelt lacks restraint. Neither man convinces the other. As the years pass, Roosevelt's body begins to betray him more openly. Malaria contracted in Africa weakens his immune system. Chronic pain settles into his joints. His vision deteriorates further. Asthma returns with cruel familiarity, as if reminding him that the boy who once struggled for breath never truly vanished. Still he pushes. He exercises daily, walks long distances despite pain, refuses to acknowledge limits. To slow down feels like surrender, and surrender feels like death. Family becomes his anchor. His children are grown now, shaped by his intensity in different ways. Some thrive under his example. Others struggle beneath the weight of it. He loves them all fiercely, though not always gently. His letters are full of advice, encouragement, and expectation. He urges them toward courage, effort, moral clarity. Among them, his youngest son, Quentin, holds a special place. Bright, adventurous, fearless. When Quentin joins the Army Air Service during the Great War, Roosevelt is proud and afraid in equal measure. Aviation is new, dangerous, unforgiving. But danger has never frightened Roosevelt when paired with purpose. In 1917, the United States finally enters the war. Roosevelt wants desperately to serve. He offers to raise a volunteer division and lead it himself, despite his age and failing health. The request is denied. Wilson refuses to send a former president into battle. Roosevelt takes the rejection hard. For a man who has always met challenge with action, watching from the sidelines feels unbearable. He throws himself into writing instead. He speaks in support of the war effort, urging unity, sacrifice, resolve. He visits wounded soldiers, encourages families, reminds the nation that effort is the price of survival. Then, in July of 1918, the blow he has long feared arrives. Quentin is shot down over France and killed in action. The news reaches Roosevelt quietly, without ceremony. He absorbs it without visible collapse. Those around him notice a change immediately. His shoulders slump, his voice softens, something in him dims. This grief is different from the others. He has lost loved ones before, his wife, his mother, friends, comrades. But this loss violates something deeper. Fathers are not meant to bury sons. The natural order feels broken. Roosevelt does not retreat publicly, he never does. But the fire that once drove him forward now burns lower, steadier, restrained by sorrow. He speaks less, writes less, smiles rarely. Friends worry. His health declines rapidly after Quentin's death. The accumulated strain of decades, physical injury, disease, relentless exertion, begins to take its toll. He grows thinner, tires easily. His breathing grows labored, yet even now he refuses to indulge despair. He believes sorrow must be borne with dignity. That grief, like fear, must be faced directly. He writes that Quentin died as he would have wished, serving something larger than himself. The words are sincere. They do not lessen the pain. As the war draws to a close, Roosevelt watches from a distance. Victory arrives. Celebration spreads. The world reshapes itself again. He does not feel relief. Instead, he feels the quiet settling of an ending. On the night of January 5th, 1919, Theodore Roosevelt goes to bed at his home in Oyster Bay, New York. Snow lies gently outside. The house is still. There are no speeches to prepare, no battles to fight, no policies to challenge. Sometime before dawn, his heart fails. There is no struggle, no final declaration, just rest. When the news spreads, it does so with reverence. Newspapers print tributes filled with awe and contradiction. He had been too forceful for some, too aggressive, too moral, too impatient. But no one doubts his sincerity. An aide remarks quietly, "Death had to take him sleeping." For if Roosevelt had been awake, there would have been a fight. The line lingers because it feels true. He had fought weakness from childhood, fought grief, fought corruption, fought complacency, fought the slow pull of stillness itself. And now, finally, the fight is over. But the echo remains. After Theodore Roosevelt's death, the nation feels a subtle shift, as if a constant pressure has been released. The noise does not vanish all at once. It fades gradually, leaving behind a space that feels strangely empty. Roosevelt had been so present for so long, arguing, urging, pushing, that his absence feels unnatural. In the days that follow, newspapers struggle to capture him accurately. Headlines reduce his life to phrases and feats. Rough Rider, trustbuster, conservationist, warrior. Each is true. None are complete. The man himself resists compression. He had lived too widely, too intensely, to fit neatly into a single definition. Public memory begins its work, smoothing edges, emphasizing heroism, softening contradiction. Statues are proposed, speeches are delivered. School books condense his life into pages. Yet beneath the simplified version, something restless remains. Roosevelt had changed the presidency in ways that could not be undone. Before him, the office had often been cautious, restrained, reactive. After him, it carried expectation. Presidents were now expected to speak clearly, act decisively, and claim moral authority. Some rose to that challenge, others struggled beneath its weight. He had stretched the role forward, not through law alone, but through presence. He believed leadership required visibility, that the people needed to see effort, conviction, and engagement. He believed silence from those in power created space for abuse, and so he had filled that space himself, loudly and unapologetically. Future leaders would debate this legacy endlessly. Some would argue he expanded executive power too far. Others would argue he merely used power already available. Both would be correct. Roosevelt did not invent authority. He exercised it fully. His conservation works outlived controversy. Forests he protected continued to grow. Rivers ran cleaner than they might have. Species survived that would otherwise have vanished. Children visited national parks without knowing they were once contested, once defended by a man who believed preservation was not weakness, but responsibility. He had seen destruction firsthand. He had learned that what is lost rarely returns. Theodore Roosevelt also left behind a model of masculinity that both inspired and burdened generations. Strength, courage, resilience, action. These qualities became ideals, sometimes misunderstood as permission for dominance or aggression. Roosevelt himself believed strength required discipline, restraint, and moral clarity. Without those, power became cruelty. This nuance was often lost. Critics revisited his views with sharper eyes. His support for American expansion, his assumptions shaped by his era, his blind spots regarding race and empire. History did not absolve him of these limitations. Instead, it placed them beside his achievements, insisting both be seen together. Roosevelt would have accepted this judgment. He believed accountability was inseparable from leadership. To act boldly was to invite scrutiny. To influence the future was to accept correction from it. Privately, those who knew him best remembered smaller moments. The way he read aloud to his children, changing voices mid-sentence. The way he laughed, loud, sudden, uncontained. The way he paced while thinking, unable to sit still for long. The way he sought physical exertion even in exhaustion, as if motion itself reassured him. He was not a calm man. He was not a patient man. But he was a sincere one. Letters reveal a man who worried deeply about doing enough, about wasting opportunity, about failing to meet the demands of ability. He believed talent imposed obligation. To have strength and not use it felt immoral. This belief drove him relentlessly and wore him down. The phrase "the strenuous life" became synonymous with his worldview, but it was often misinterpreted. It did not mean endless struggle for glory. It meant engagement, presence, refusal to drift. He believed life was meant to be participated in fully, not observed from a distance. That belief resonated far beyond politics. Athletes quoted him. Soldiers carried his words. Writers admired his energy, his moral urgency, his refusal to detach. Even those who disagreed with his conclusions respected his commitment. He had not lived cautiously. He had lived deliberately. As decades passed, his image softened. The loudness faded. The intensity became story. Yet the core of his life, the insistence that effort mattered, remained stubbornly relevant. In moments of national challenge, his name resurfaced. In debates over power and restraint, his example was invoked. In discussions of leadership, his presence lingered like a reference point. Not a blueprint, a challenge. To lean forward rather than back. To choose engagement over safety. to accept responsibility rather than evade it. Theodore Roosevelt had never asked to be admired. He had asked to be taken seriously, and in that, he succeeded. The land he protected still breathes. The institutions he challenged still bear marks of his pressure. The presidency still carries expectations he helped define. He does not rest easily in history. He remains unsettled, dynamic, unresolved. And perhaps that is appropriate, because he never believed stillness was the goal. As years pass, and the immediacy of Theodore Roosevelt's life recedes, what remains is not noise, but posture, a way of standing in the world, a way of responding to difficulty. His story settles into the deeper layers of memory, where influence works slowly and invisibly. He had never believed life was meant to be gentle. From the beginning, breath had been uncertain, weakness had been intimate, fear had lived close to the surface, and because of this he never trusted ease. Comfort felt temporary, stillness felt dangerous, motion felt honest. That belief shaped every stage of his life. He did not seek peace by avoiding struggle. He sought peace by meeting it prepared. He did not pursue happiness through safety or through engagement. He believed fulfillment came from effort aligned with purpose, not from protection against discomfort. This philosophy left marks. It built parks and policies, yes, but it also left scars on his body, on his family, on his spirit. He accepted those costs willingly. To him, the greater tragedy was wasted capacity. To have strength and not use it felt like a moral failure. In his later years, as strength slowly withdrew, this belief became harder to sustain. He could no longer outrun fatigue, could no longer outwork pain. The arena that had once welcomed him now stood at a distance. This was perhaps his final test, to accept limits. He did not do so easily, but he did so honestly. Letters from his final years reveal a man still engaged, still thinking, still concerned with the direction of the world, but no longer convinced he could shape it directly. There is frustration there, but also clarity. He had done what he could. He had entered the arena again and again. Now others would have to decide whether to step forward. History continued to argue with him after his death. Some praised his decisiveness. Others warned against it. Some celebrated his expansion of executive power. Others feared it. Some admired his vision of national strength. Others critiqued its consequences. He would not have minded the argument. He believed debate was proof of vitality. Indifference was the real enemy. His life invited engagement, not agreement. Theodore Roosevelt did not offer a comfortable legacy. He offered a demanding one. He asked questions that resisted easy answers. How much power is too much? When does restraint become cowardice? When does action become arrogance? What do we owe the future? These questions did not die with him. They resurfaced in new contexts, under new names, carried by new voices. And quietly, beneath the public debate, his private example endured. A boy who refused to accept fragility as destiny. A man who transformed fear into discipline. A leader who believed responsibility increased with ability. A father who loved fiercely, imperfectly, and without reserve. A citizen who believed the nation was not an inheritance, but a project. He had once written that credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who errs and comes up short again and again. The line endured because it was lived. He had lived it, not symbolically, not selectively, but fully. And so his story does not end in silence. It continues in moments of choice. in decisions made under pressure, in individuals who refuse to retreat when effort is required. Theodore Roosevelt does not linger as a gentle memory. He lingers as a challenge. To act when action is difficult. To prepare when preparation is inconvenient. To protect what cannot protect itself. To accept responsibility rather than evade it. The night settles again as it always does. Wind moves through preserved forests. Water flows through land once threatened. Somewhere a young person faces limitation, physical, emotional or moral, and decides not to withdraw. That decision echoes. It echoes the boy who lifted weights in a small room, the man who rode into gunfire, the leader who refused quiet comfort, the citizen who believed effort mattered. Theodore Roosevelt's life was never about rest. It was about motion, about engagement, about stepping forward, and in that forward movement, his presence remains, unfinished, unresolved, alive.
As these moments fade into the past, what lessons remain behind? Do they warn us, guide us, or simply remind us of what it means to be human? And tonight, what will this story leave you thinking about?